How are we doing, guys? Andy Wilson, the Sneakonomist here, and on this week's recap we are going to be looking at Under Armour and Hibbett Sports earnings. JD Sports have given us an update with regards to some of the costs and the trials that they're coming across with regards to Brexit. And StockX, there's been some more talk about them coming to listing on the stock market at some point this year. Before I go on, if you want to keep up to date on all the business and the financial side of the sneaker world as well as athleisure, please make sure you're following The Sneakonomist on Instagram and at Full Frame Kicks on Instagram, as well as our YouTube channel where a lot of this content is dropping. So would you believe it? We are in the middle of February almost already, and we're still getting earnings coming out from some of the manufacturers and the retailers as to how they fared into the tail end of 2020 going into 2021. Now, Under Armour came out this week and said that with their full year numbers, their sales and profits both beat expectations. The profitability beat came from them ordering less stock versus demand. This is something that we have been talking about recently and is going to be very prevalent in 2021 as we've had certain bottlenecks with regards to stock being delivered. They want to make sure they've got the right amount of stock and they're not going to be lumbered with the wrong stock for the wrong seasons. Some of the bits we've talked about recently are logistical issues. There's a shortage of freight units, etc., that to be able to move product around from Asia over to the US and into Europe. And also with lockdown, people don't know whether they're going to be going out on holiday, whether they're going skiing, whether they're, where we're at. So a lot of stuff that's been purchased has really been concentrating on comfort within the home. So that concentrating on making sure you've got the right amounts of inventory is going to be ever more important this year. So they're saying, Under Armour is saying they're going to manage more closely their stock levels in 2021 than they have been already, which means you're going to see less sales really, which is great for Under Armour, but not so good for us as the consumer. They're talking about cut price offerings in their outlets are going to be reduced as well. Another thing that's been very, very important through lockdown and also going forward is connection with your customers. We've seen a lot of interactions with regards to companies' platforms, whether it's apps that are serving Halo sales while people are on the app. They're getting rewarded. They're using that to be able to do other actions and purchases, particularly. They're talking about their brand strength and their engagement. So this is all about keeping your customer engaged and the sense of your brand resonating well and hopefully pushing on to more purchases. They were cautious on 2021. They're saying that they're assuming the same macro issues as we're seeing now, but they hope that they're going to be improving as the year progresses. We're already seeing good rollouts of vaccines. Obviously, things won't go back to normal globally, or whatever the new normal will be globally, until we have had a proper rollout of vaccines across the board. But they're hoping things are going to start to improve, and I definitely think that should be the case. As we've seen with some of the other manufacturers, they're going to be reducing the amount of wholesalers they're supplying to. In 2021, they're looking to close 2,000 to 3,000 wholesale doors that year, and by the end of 2022 they want to have closed about 10,000. So unfortunately the pressure is going to continue to fall on those smaller retailers that might not necessarily be able to have the turnover that's going to allow them to get access here. But what it's doing is, again, we're going to that DTC. Under Armour want to be selling as much stuff on their own platforms and themselves on their bricks, through their bricks and mortars or on their online platforms. The cash on their balance sheet is pretty large at the moment. They were asked about what they were going to be doing with that, whether they're looking at acquisitions, etc. And they want to keep that cash on the balance sheet. They want to be nimble and have optionality through this COVID tricky period. They have said they might look to reduce their debt in the future. Now, the shares did rise nicely on the back of the earnings, and actually this week they closed up just over 7%. On to Hibbett Sports, which is a large US wholesaler. Their shares are up 5% this week. They had a big beat for the fourth quarter. Their sales came in up 21.9%. That was against the estimates of high single digit to low double digit growth. They talked in-store and online momentum continuing, holiday sales, and also importantly stimulus that's still driving things. We're still seeing the stimulus checks being used to fund purchases in this space. They've made new customer acquisitions in 2020, and they've said that they've seen repeat purchases from those new customers, and they expect in 2021 for those more new customers to turn up and them also to be making repeat purchases as well. So they're fairly positive on that. They have been improving their in-store experience. Obviously, bricks and mortar have taken a bit of a back seat in 2020, but we did already start to see this through 2019, where wholesalers and brands were really improving their in-store experiences, and so they're doing a big store refresh program, which just makes their stores a nicer place for people to shop. Their omni-channel offering, which means they are offering products across lots of different channels, whether that's bricks and mortar, DTC, online, etc. They're saying that's helping the customer adopt their e-commerce products, if you like. And from the bricks and mortar perspective, one of the reasons they've done so well is because they are sort of small, they're called small box stores. So they're not giant, huge, great big stores, but they're in mid-tier communities. They're not in big covered malls. We've talked previously about how if you have to wear a mask, if you went to a shopping mall, you would drive up, park, and then you would have to be wearing your mask while you're walking around. And that's why we've seen retail parks, if you like, where people can drive up to the door of a store, put their mask on, go and shop, come out, take your mask off, and that's why we've seen a popularity there. They're expecting for 2021, it's very, very wide, their expectations. They're saying either negative low single digits to positive low single digits, so quite a wide range, and that's for sales growth for this coming year. So it's not really helpful there, but it is definitely something to keep an eye on. JD Sports, we talked recently about their latest acquisition, which is Downtown Locker Room. Just after that, they raised some more cash off of their balance sheet, and they came out this week in an interview, and the CEO said that actually the Brexit issues are worse than were originally feared. They are planning to open a warehouse in Europe. They want to employ about 1,000 members of staff. That won't affect any of the members of staff in any of their UK operations at the moment. You will recall, if you've been following my stuff, that I've mentioned if they are looking at some big acquisitions, they may well look to do something in the EU, because at the moment they've been shipping a lot of stuff to the UK and then having to ship it from the UK into Europe, and that is incurring tariffs as it moves out of the UK. That's causing added costs and also slower trade processes. So they currently have one warehouse in Belgium, which is 80,000 square feet, and that's just not enough. So I definitely expect either some kind of acquisition of business or some money being ploughed in to grow their warehouses in the EU. So they recently raised £465 million. That was after they bought Downtown Locker Room, and I think that gives them somewhere in the region of about £1 billion on their balance sheet to play with. The shares of JD Sports were down just over 5.5% this week. StockX, they did a raise. They raised some funds just before Christmas, and they'd done some earlier in 2020 as well. So most recently, they raised $275 million in that fresh round of funding just before Christmas. There was an article in Insider magazine where it says that StockX may go public as early as this year, and that no timing or valuation has been mentioned. That would involve them listing on the stock market, presumably the New York Stock Exchange, as they are US based, and would allow their co-founders and current workers and shareholders, if you like, private shareholders, to be able to cash in some money, and would allow people like you and me to be able to invest in StockX. Now, the co-founder, Greg Schwartz, he was in the interview to say that the options are open for StockX, lots of different options, but an IPO, or an initial public offering, as in listing on the stock market, is one of them. Whatever they do, it's going to be right for the business and at the right time as well. So when they raised their $275 million just before Christmas, before that they were already valued at around $2.8 billion. So I would imagine with that raising just the end of last year, as well as going through the process of going into a listing on the stock market, I would think that we're going to see a valuation for the firm of well over $3 billion, maybe up to sort of $3.5 billion. But we'll have to wait and see how that goes, but we'll definitely keep you up to date on that. The expectations of a list on the stock market have been expected. You may recall that Scott Cutler took over, I think at the beginning of last year, as the CEO, taking over from Josh Luber, who has taken a step back. He's still obviously a key shareholder in StockX, but he's looking at doing some other entrepreneurial bits and pieces. Scott Cutler, of course, was the head, or previously, I should say, the head of listings at the New York Stock Exchange. So this was clearly then putting a Wall Street guy in the shop window to get StockX listed on the stock market. They are currently looking for an SEC reporting manager. That is someone that you will need to be reporting to the Stock Exchange Commission with regulatory updates. So the sort of thing you'll need if you're going to be floating on the stock market. So watch this space. I hope you've had a very good week, and I'll speak to you soon.